Hi, I'm Benton Stokes.
And I'm Elane O'Rourke.
And this is Cocktail Theology.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
So we decided to do the podcast Cocktail Theology live, which we haven't done like on Facebook for a very long time.
It has been a while. Yeah, so we are recording Cocktail Theology now.
Right.
That's why I'm wearing these.
Doesn't he look really sound geeky?
They're sexy.
It's so nice.
And they are.
They are.
They are.
Yeah, people have said it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we are recording this episode, this Advent episode of Cocktail Theology live on Facebook because we want to hear from you. We are very, very interested in how Advent is going. And the topic for our Advent this year has been dealing with Advent noise.
Yeah.
And Benton has some great ideas about what that looks like. I have different ideas that are less great, but probably more theologically profound.
Always more
theologically profound.
Always
but we're
more
going to talk
profound.
about both what we are discovering and what you're discovering. So we're really glad to have you here. And then we'll turn into Cocktail Theology podcast, which is what we do.
Yeah. If you aren't familiar with the podcast, we talk about life, God, roller coasters, faith, relationships, while enjoying a cocktail.
Right.
I am enjoying currently sort of a modified Negroni. And if you don't know what a Negroni is, it is a gin-based cocktail. In this case, I'm using Tanqueray Rangport.
Rangport.
Mm-hmm. It's a very light lime flavored. Like a lot of people, I think when they think gin, they immediately think that it's going to taste like a pine tree.
No.
And some gins frankly do.
They do.
But this
which you
doesn't
may like,
at
and
all.
we don't judge.
No. But this one doesn't. So it's gin, mostly gin. There is some Aperol in there, which is sort of a bitter aperitif, would you say?
Yeah.
And then there's also some, what was the other thing I put in it? Well, I topped it with a elderberry tonic, which we had in there. So it's got a little bit of a sparkle thing to it, which is nice.
Yeah.
And it has a little bit of sweet vermouth.
Got it. Yeah, so modified Negroni. Yeah. So very little on the Negroni, heavier on the gin with a little bit of spritz.
Yes, and it's twice as much gin as everything else.
Okay.
It's nice gin.
I'm drinking Martini. I'm sorry. I'm really boring. I'm also using Rangpur and a little bit of Dolin Blanc, and I like, okay, I'm really weird in this way. I like actually zesting lemon peel into my Martini rather than doing a twist or whatever. Because then you get the flavor.
I think, and a lot of people, though, I think they assume that a Martini has an olive in it.
They're wrong.
Okay. You heard it here, people.
So can I just say right now that there aren't many things I'm judgmental about. But the olive in a Martini, I'm sorry, it's not a Martini. You may enjoy it, and that's wonderful. And please do not give up what you're drinking. But don't call it a Martini. If it's got chocolate, it's not a Martini. Putting it in a cocktail glass does not make it a Martini. All right, we're done with the pontificating.
Ran over.
Right.
So, but back to what we do on Cocktail Theology. So we're about 40 episodes in. We're in our second season now.
Really? Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay.
If you aren't familiar with the podcast, I invite you to find us. We are all over the place. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Stitcher.
So we're on Google. We're on Stitcher. We're on cocktailtheology.com.
And I was going to say, you can always find us on our website.
Right.
Looks like we have Scott Miller and Carly Price and Cynthia Phelps and Christian Hansen.
It is wonderful to...
Friends, it's so good to see you guys.
I mean, even though we're not seeing you, I feel like we're seeing you. It's so wonderful.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
We love it. We love it.
So we're talking about Advent.
If you aren't familiar with that terminology or that concept, Advent is anticipation, it's expectation, it's building to Christmas.
Yes.
Christmas actually doesn't start on the liturgical calendar until you get to December 25. So up until then, if you worship in a church that follows the liturgical calendar, then you know that there are 4 Sundays that lead up to Christmas, and each of those Sundays represents a different idea or theme in anticipation of.
Right.
So the first Sunday of Advent is hope, and then the one that we just acknowledged was peace. Then I think we come up on 2 others. I don't know exactly. Justice, I think, is justice one?
Oh, look how... Okay, so I just need to say really quickly, this is sort of an adjunct, but so Benton is currently working at a church that's very justice, very homelessness focused. I mean, really wonderful in the work they do in the community. So I can understand why you would think that.
Yeah.
But you're wrong. It's joy.
It's joy, right. It's joy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the 4th one is love. Now people interpret this in various different ways, so I'm basically ribbing him, but those are the 4 traditional ones, right?
Okay, sure. Each of the Sundays leading up to Christmas, then that's a focal point, right? And then there are candles that some churches light to mark each of those Sundays. Mm-hmm. So like if you're in a church that lights candles, for instance, you'll light the first candle on the first Sunday, the first and second candles on the second Sunday, and then it builds up until Christmas Eve or Christmas morning when you light the Christ candle in the middle. So there are ultimately 5 candles that you light. Right. So these are ways that we recognize Advent. And Advent really, and I don't mean this in the negative should, because we say no shoulds, but should actually be a season of reflection and anticipation, a lot of quiet. And in our culture, December is the opposite of quiet. December might be the loudest month of the year. Wow. And so wanted to talk a little bit about that and see if you guys are experiencing this. I think for myself, this year's a little different, and I'll get back to that in a minute, simply because I'm in such a transition this year, and things are just a little bit different. But I think in years past, for me, and maybe this is true for you, there are a lot of external factors or stressors, I call them, that grab us. The emails that you get with all the sales leading up to Black Friday and beyond, right? Which it doesn't stop on Black Friday. Or the TV commercials. Folks, start decorating their homes and putting up their trees and decking the halls early. There were homes in the neighborhood here that had lights up before Thanksgiving by a week or more. And this is not a diss on anybody, but it's just an acknowledgement that people enter the celebration of Christmas really early. People talk about how Thanksgiving gets glossed over these days, and I don't argue with that. But what really gets glossed over is Advent. And I think unless Christmas is about the coming of the Christ child, the coming of Jesus, then Advent really isn't relevant for you anyway. Christmas is a secular celebration. Mm-hmm. For many people, Christmas is a secular celebration, but for us it is not. And I'm guessing since you're listening to us talk about this, it's probably not for you. We were having a conversation the other day, and we were talking about just how noisy the season is. I think you have to go into Advent, if you're going to acknowledge Advent or a Christian Christmas, I think you have to go into it mindfully and intentionally. Mm-hmm. You can't expect it to just happen for you. Right. So a lot of what I'm talking about is learning how to, or choosing to, tune out. Whether it's making the choice to not listen to Mariah Carey's Christmas album until Christmas instead of on November 1st. I mean, it can be something silly like I'm not going to get a salted caramel mocha in a red Christmas cup at Starbucks until this date. But whatever it is, being intentional about that. Yep. And saying, you know what, I'm going to choose instead to have some quiet, have some introspection. Mm-hmm. Some of those external stressors are well-intentioned things. Mm-hmm. Some of them are church responsibilities, obligations, things that you're invited to do, whether it's caroling or a party or fellowship. All good things. It could be family stuff. Right. But all these things are stressors leading
Right.
up to Christmas that can be distractions.
Right.
And that can actually lead to us missing the joy of the season.
Right. So if I can lift up two pieces
Please.
of that.
Yeah.
I hear people lamenting that they come up to Christmas and Charlie Brown Christmas, right? Where Charlie Brown says, basically, what is this all for? What is the meaning of this? Mm-hmm. It's that sense, right? We get to Christmas sometimes and we're thinking about all of the wonderful celebrations. I mean, even at its very best, all the wonderful celebrations. We can go into Christmas kind of then having to catch up to the Jesus bit.
Yeah.
And again, this is not a condemnation of people at all. But if what we are trying to do is to follow Jesus, pay attention to Jesus, see how the way Jesus lived his life and what he means fits into our lives, leaping into Christmas without any Jesus is pretty, it's tough. It's really hard to then kind of go backwards.
It's very tough.
So there's that piece. I personally don't want people to get up to Christmas Day thinking that they haven't had any Jesus, and then they get to Christmas Day.
Right.
The other piece of that is that, in my experience, whenever there's a lot to do, or there are a lot of expectations, or it's complicated, we have to deliberately make time to think about whatever it is we need to think about. In this case, it's about thinking about what it meant that God was coming into the world.
Yeah.
Why it mattered to Mary, and why we worry about whether, and not in the technical sense, but why do we care about whether it was the Holy Spirit that impregnated her or Joseph? It really, truly is a theological question, not a factual question, right? So the idea that God was involved in this, in a way, that God was choosing to be part of our lives in a really material way.
Yeah.
It takes time to think about that stuff.
It does.
And if all we're thinking about is how to get the stuff done, how to buy the presents, how to get the tree and all of that, we can lose the texture of that. That, again, it's not heretical, it's not evil, but for those of us who are trying to make choices about our spirituality, who are trying to be conscious of it, that can be a real loss.
If you are seeking a Christ-centered Christmas, and if you're spending the bulk of the season consumed with ideas of what you're going to buy Aunt Matilda, booking your flight, and who am I going to see, and am I getting enough time with everybody that I need to get time with? Is Mom going to be unhappy that I'm spending Christmas Eve with the in-laws? What about the kids? What are we going to do about their presents? What about Santa Claus? These kinds of stresses that happen, some of them are self-imposed. Some of them are completely external, where we're just hearing about it from Mom or Grandma or Dad or whoever back here, or our kids. We're hearing about it.
Right.
It's like, how do you find a Christ-centered Christmas in that if you're not intentional?
Right. So we sat down and went, okay, so what are we going to do?
Yeah.
How are we going to do this? Because it's different for us this year.
Yeah.
I mean, even it's less different for me in some ways, but it's still different. I mean, you guys aren't here, and we're not, in all the places we're not. And this is big freaking different for you this year.
Really, really different for
Really
me
different.
this year.
So we sat down and said, so what are we going to do about this?
Right.
How are we going to pay attention to Advent? And we came up with some ideas, which have been more or less successful so far. More or less successful so
More
far.
and less successful.
And the other piece of this is I want to acknowledge that for some of you, this Christmas is very new. Either you have lost somebody this year who was really important, a marker of Christmas, and so Christmas is the first year without whomever this is, and that's big. And I really don't want to lose sight of that. Or this is the 10th Christmas without a person, and that still is big. Or you've moved, or something has changed dramatically. So it'd be great to hear from you if you want to just go ahead and put messages up there about how's it going this year. What are you discovering about yourself, or what are you discovering you chose to do or not choosing to do, or just kind of riding along with?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I'm noticing that Carly's watching, and Carly's a dear friend of ours that moved from Nashville to Florida, which was a very big and bold move for Carly.
I still applaud that
In
move.
me too. And in similar fashion, I moved across the country to San Jose. For me, this season is less complicated. Right now, I'm not going to say that it's guilt because I don't think it is at all. But I feel a little bit of loss that I'm missing some things back in Nashville. But the time that I'm having here has been really good. The time that I've been able to not be responsible for carrying on any traditions or making sure that anything gets done except for the stuff that I, as an individual, am responsible for, like who I'm giving presents to, which I've already taken care of all of that.
Okay, wait a
Has
minute.
sort of what?
He's already taken care of it. I just need to say, this is a man who's finished his Christmas shopping.
Mostly, more or less.
Okay, we're done.
Okay.
Carry on.
But you know, it's a little bit less complicated for me this year. So I am focused more on Advent more than I have been in the past. Now, I'm not being very successful with getting a practice in place. I'm terrible with setting new habits. Terrible. And so I really should have been leading into this a while back, and didn't.
And what he means is he would have been more effective
Thank
starting
you.
it earlier.
Yeah, should have. No should. However, I do find that I'm in a calmer space, a quieter space. I am intentionally getting some quiet every day, and I am intentionally in prayer every day about just the season that we're in and what's coming, and prepare and trying to prepare my heart and myself, my spirit for that. That I can say. As far as establishing a new practice, I haven't been successful at it. One of the things that we had talked about was trying to get into a devotional daily and journaling on that. That's not been great for me. However, I have found it much, much easier to find quiet.
One thing that you've said that's so important, I want to harp on this for a minute, is so we had talked about what we were going to do this season that was going to kind of help us frame the season and choose the things we were going to do rather than feel like we had to do everything.
Right.
So we've gotten pretty specific about it, and some things we've done, some things that we've just kind of not done. But I love what you just said about, we had talked about doing the Advent devotional thing and the journaling piece, and that hasn't been great for you, but you've found quiet time every day. That's fantastic. Like, that's brilliant. That's not a loss. It's not a failure of the other piece.
Yeah.
And I just so want to emphasize that I think it's incredibly important to do this kind of thing, but sometimes you just have to feel it out. For me, making sure I've got something I do every day is incredibly important because I can just start doing all kinds of things. I've got that kind of brain, right? Yeah. Whereas, if I if I have to do some kind of Advent devotional every day, even if it's just listening to my own voice from our Advent devotionals, it helps me kind of reground.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But for you, finding that quiet time, that's spectacular. So I want to give you applause on that. what are you guys doing, and what are you finding about Christmas and the new place and all of that's going on for you guys? What do you?
And if there's a struggle you're having right now, share that too.
Yeah,
so
please.
We can talk about that.
We'd really like to talk about
One
that.
of the things that we were talking about earlier today was just how this season is one that sort of can draw grief to the surface. And grief is something that we
talk
don't...
about a lot.
Well,
we talk about a lot.
We talk about a lot. I think
other people
culturally we don't necessarily understand what grief entails. We can be really, really hard on ourselves when we're grieving, and we don't even understand exactly what's happening. Mm-hmm. We tend to equate, grieving with a death.
Yeah.
But we grieve losses of all kinds. And so many times the things in our lives that aren't the way we would like them to be, or maybe the way they used to be, we grieve that.
Absolutely.
During this season. And it seems like those things come to the surface.
And that is completely appropriate.
And yes, it is completely appropriate. And that's the other problem that happens when all of that gets drowned out with the noise. You don't pay attention to that, and you don't go through the healthy steps of getting through that.
Right.
And then when Christmas comes, you don't understand why you're so miserable.
Right. Or it doesn't get drowned out by the noise. The noise actually kind of amplifies it, right? Because there's all this noise surrounding us, right? The external Christmassy noise. And inside we're just grieving. And so it's like, right? Yeah. So we just did a 2-part series here in San Jose that's on video, and it will become slightly better video. And if you're on our email list, you'll get the pieces on this. But we just did a 2-part thing on forgiveness. And I lifted up the idea that a necessary part of a healthy process of forgiveness includes grief. And I don't care what you're forgiving somebody for, there's grief. Because the whole reason we feel like we need to forgive or we feel hurt is because there's loss. We don't acknowledge loss at all, unless it's something either a death, and we're not even very good at that, or money, or a job. But every kind of little loss requires some amount of grief. And forgiveness is one of the pieces of that. So we've been talking a lot about grief and a lot about loss, and we are not good at I'll just speak for me, and I know you're not good at it, so I can speak for both of us. Okay. We're not great at the whole loss thing. Like, you avoid loss, right? And I go, whatever, it's done, but we're not good at that. And loss is a big part of what we do. So we have not scrolled down, which I just realized. So let's scroll down, see what people have been saying to us. Hey, Michelle. Okay, really? You said hi to Jack? Thank you, Kristen.
Shout out to Jack.
Shout out to Jack. Okay.
He's over here.
So this is where we are. Oh, thank you, Cynthia. I'm glad you used the Advent meditations. We saw your post on Instagram. It made me very happy.
Very sweet.
So just as a, so we were talking about how we had agreed to do Advent meditations. So our schedules have not matched at all in the last week, which is new and weird. Anyway, so we haven't done them together. So what's been happening for me is in the morning, I have to do back exercises. It doesn't matter. But I get bored and I have to do something. So I've been listening to my own Advent meditations, which is just fascinating, right? Because what used to happen in the past is I would watch myself or hear myself and be really critical. It was extremely painful. But now I'm hearing those Advent meditations in the morning, and although it's kind of weird to listen to myself, it feels more like my voice talking to myself. And I don't know, for those of you who are teachers, there are times when you are talking to yourself as well, or preachers talking to yourself rather than talking to the other people. So it's been kind of an interesting experience for me. So I'm glad you're finding use in them. I'm finding use in them too. Who knew? You think you missed the Advent meditations? Oh, Christian. So if you go to our website and you go to www.schoolforseekers.com/Advent-meditations, you're welcome. You can sign up for them. We ask for a tiny donation. Every day you get a link to a video meditation, which is voiced by me and written by me. Music is by him, it's so good. It's not, he could do that, but I couldn't do that. Yeah. So we do that. So take a look at that. Michelle says, I agree, grief and loss are hard to process. I would rather skip that step as well.
We'd all rather skip that step.
Okay, wait a minute.
Okay, I and Michelle would like to skip that step. Thanks.
Yeah, it is. And holidays of any kind of marker brings those things to the surface, which you've already talked about.
Right.
We've talked about nostalgia as being a longing for a past that never was. And one of the things that happens at Christmas, birthdays, I don't know, anniversaries, is a longing for something that really wasn't actually true. I think with Christmas, there's such a sense of what the perfect Christmas, it doesn't matter which perfect Christmas, but we have a sense of what the perfect Christmas is supposed to be.
Right.
One of the spiritual growth areas I think we have to make, and this is not something you can do in the moment. I truly believe this, that every Christmas is perfect in its own way, even when it's horrible. I was telling Benton earlier that I've had 2 dramatically horrible Christmases. I mean, truly horrible. I'll give you one example. I won't give you the other one. Here's one example. I went to go see my mom. My mom and I were not in great shape as in a relationship. And when I was there, I basically literally ran as often as I need to during the day in order to deal with the anxiety. So it meant I was running pretty much like 8 hours out of every 24. It was really awful. So I came back from that, came home to my apartment, and discovered my girlfriend and my best friend sleeping together. Yay! Okay. But the point of all that being that it was really, really awful. And I look back on it now and say, okay, wait a minute. This is not good. This isn't healthy. And I think if it hadn't been juxtaposed to what we think Christmas is supposed to be, right, I would have just kept going.
Yeah.
Right? I would have just kept dealing with things in ways that were not good. And so as much as I would never want to repeat any of that Christmas at all, it was really useful.
Yeah.
Because I don't do that anymore, ever.
Right.
For any reason, for anyone. You should probably write that down. Okay. So any other thoughts about that, or about how are the holidays going for you guys? What are you finding challenging? We truly want to hear from you, because we want to be able to talk about it and address it with stuff that's actually mattering to you this year. Hey, Stephanie. Scott says we have Advent calendars for the kids to open up each night. We light candles on Sunday and sing a song about Advent. We made and decorated cookies with the kids. Okay, so Joel does all that with them, but I was close by. Yes. And if you're a teacher, you're doing a lot of this regardless of that. So Scott, if you wouldn't mind kind of coming back on that, how are you experiencing that? If you can kind of lift off the fact that Joel does it and talk about whether that's helping you lead up to Christmas. I mean, you're in a liturgical church now, right? So they're thinking about Advent particularly. How's that working for you? I think here's the thing for me. I always want to know how it's working. So we have, right now you can't see it, but right over there is the mantle over the fireplace, and we have 2 Advent candles lighted. We've been doing those every week on our Sunday evening things. So we do Sacred San Jose on Sunday evenings. And so we've been lighting the Advent candles, but tonight before we got on here, I really wanted to light them and be reminded that we're in the second week of Advent. So how is this working for you? How is it affecting you? And is it useful, or are you finding it not useful? And if you just want to send us a note because you don't want anybody else to see it, that'd be fine. Okay, I saw your note, Scott. We'll come back to that in a second. Michelle says, doing the Advent meditations in the morning help me recognize and hear God's voice during my workday. Good. Helps me to be more aware and pay attention to the quiet moments. That's great. I want to lift up, though, that Michelle, thank you, and that takes effort.
It does.
Right? We can listen to stuff in the morning and completely forget it by the time we brush our teeth. So how are you, this would be really useful, how are you recalling that? Like what effort does it take to kind of pull those moments of quiet or those moments of reflection back into a work day. I would love to hear that. What's it like for you? Because you said you've been finding quiet times. How are you making that resonate?
I think part of it is that I'm spending more time right now than I have lately, in quite a while, at my keyboard. And I definitely find more space when I'm there. It's almost like everything sort of gets pushed out.
Flow.
Yeah, there's like a bubble that I exist in when I'm there. A lot of it too, I guess, has been I've had more time just by myself in the last couple of weeks. And not large quantities of time, but moments here and there where I've been either here in the house by myself, in my car by myself, at the church by myself, where it's just been really conducive to sort of invite God into that space and just sort of reflect.
Right.
I mean, I've been intentional about it, and yet those moments seem to be finding me. It's not like I'm having to go create that.
All right, can we sit there with that for a moment? The moments find you. And it seems like what you're saying is that you're open to them finding you. So when they come to you, don't go, no, moments. I have other things I need to do. Right? Which I do. I will say, oh, okay, here it comes. I can feel it coming on. Excuse me. But I have this I really need to do that's so much more important than, God. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's
So some of it,
important.
I guess, for me, is just trying to be open.
Yeah. I admit that when we were in Nashville the last couple of years, well, probably, I guess just a year. Wow, that's so weird. Sorry, I feel like we've been gone from the church we used to serve for a very long time.
It's only been a year.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're just going to pause for that for a moment. Wow. But when we were going to the cathedral together, I had more that sense of boom, boom, right? It was much easier for me to kind of maintain that sense of the season, maintain that sense of the preparation. But I wonder if people who don't come from a liturgical tradition, which is what I grew up in, whether that actually is useful or not.
Because I don't come from a liturgical tradition. So that's something that I have learned in the last few years.
But you've been working at learning.
I've been working at learning.
You made an effort at learning it.
Right. I think for a lot of Christians who attend low church or evangelical churches, it's a soup. It's just a big soup of stuff they're getting on Sunday morning, stuff they're getting from media, stuff they're getting in their devotional time, it's just unless you're intentional, there's not a ton of directive, focused, Advent-centered stuff to get you from Thanksgiving to Christmas.
Sure. What I love about Advent and about Lent, both of those low seasons, if you will, in the Christian calendar, is they're those times where we look at that pain and loss and hope and joy and love and peace. Those are the seasons in the seasons of the church that are specifically designed to grieve and hope and be challenged by.
Yeah.
I've said before in multiple places, and it's probably boring by now, that one of the things I don't like about revival churches, that is churches that came about in the United States because of revival, the seasons tend to go from chocolate to chocolate. So you go from Easter then blah, blah, blah. And then Christmas ends chocolate and chocolate, rather than a like kind of ritual time to grieve and feel and mourn and be in pain and come out of it. I think, for me anyway, one of the losses that we have is that we expect church to feel like a place where we can do that as a tribe, and we just don't have it.
Yeah. The thing that we'll leave you with is just we encourage you to be intentional between now and Christmas about the time that you spend reflecting on what Christmas means to you, what Jesus coming means to you. You can do that any way that makes sense to you, any way that resonates with your spirit. And as you're experiencing loss, grief, we invite you to just really sit with that and invite God into that with you, and call on friends and others that are your support system, us, to help you navigate that during the season. Because
you can call on us.
Because
you actually can.
Yeah, for sure.
Let us be your Linus.
Yeah, I like that. I love Linus.
Let us be your Linus, because we all are Charlie Brown.
Yep.
We love you. We wish you all the best in this Advent season. We want you to know that we are incapable of keeping up what we're supposed to either, and we all are doing this together.
Yep.
So, good night.
Good night.
Oh, the airports are a mess, and the weather is a fright, but I'd never let them keep me from being here tonight. 'Cause there's nothing I desire more than sitting by the fire with you. When the holidays come around, I just need to see your smile. To curl up on the couch with you is worth every weary mile. There's no mistletoe required. I'm sitting by the fire with you. I know parties are exciting, pretty presents are inviting, and the decorations make the season bright. But I'd trade them in a minute for a Christmas with you in it, 'cause you're everything to me. There's no place I'd rather be. My heart is always home when I'm in your company, so I don't plan on leaving till we toast on New Year's Eve. Baby, I could never tire of sitting by the fire with you. I know parties are exciting, pretty presents are inviting, and the decorations make the season bright. But I'd trade them in a minute for a Christmas with you in it, 'cause you're everything to me. There's no place I'd rather be. My heart is always home when I'm in your company, so I